Hello, and welcome to another episode of Monday with Marie. Actually, this is going to be our last episode of the year for 2023, but we'll be back in 2024 on Mondays. So we've got two great questions. The first comes from Eric Foote, and Eric wants to know what's the difference between creative thinking and critical thinking? I really like this question because it really speaks to understanding how we think and how the mind works. So, creative thinking is the thinking that we do when we're trying to generate ideas. Critical thinking is the thinking that we do when we're trying to judge ideas. That is the main difference. One is judging the idea, the other one is generating the idea. Now, they overlap in how you do it, but basically the outcomes are very different, Eric. So that's what I want you to think about. Both of them talk about posing questions. Both of them talk about imagining possibilities, except in critical thinking, we are really talking about considering the perspectives, whereas in creative thinking, we're really talking about imagining those possibilities and almost limitless ideas, right? Where in critical thinking, we want to think about the logic and the reason. We want to consider alternatives. We want to determine the causes. This is where you'll hear people talk about root cause, finding that root cause of something. Whereas in creative thinking, we're not trying to think about finding the root cause. We're really trying to expand our mind and brainstorm and create inspiration and really capture inspiration. So those are sort of the differences there. And another quick difference before we go to the next question is that in creative thinking, you want to suspend judgment. Critical thinking, the whole goal is to judge and draw conclusions, to come up with the solution, right? The right solution, the right answer in a logical chain of events. So those are the two differences, Eric. I hope that helps. Our next question is from David. David says, I'm tired of hearing people talk about building trust. I want to know how. Okay, that seems reasonable, David. I got a little nervous and you're like, oh. All right. So I agree with you in the sense of we hear a lot of times in order to have a good team, in order to have good collaboration, we have to build trust. But we don't really tell people a lot around how to build trust. And I see the context of your question, I'm going to assume, is around not only how do we build trust, but how do we do it in a way that feels authentic, that doesn't feel like it's rehearsed or coerced. And a lot of that, I would say, is tapping into curiosity. That's really what I would say to you, is that you want to build trust with people, tap into being curious. Now, I know that also sounds really vague. And David, you're probably watching right now going, okay, Marie, that doesn't really help me. That's kind of vague too. But I'm going to narrow the scope, I promise. So here's how we narrow the scope. So when you think about trusting someone, and of course, we've talked about predictive trust versus vulnerable-based trust. But there's another aspect to this where I think Patrick Lencioni does an amazing job with really helping people understand that. There's another aspect, which is our own experience and our own personality around trust, right? Some people trust very easily. They're comfortable, they see someone, they get a gut feeling like I like this person, and they kind of go for it. Others of us are very skeptical. We don't trust easily. We're kind of, we want to see how you're going to behave. We want to watch you. We want to observe. And so I think the first step is to recognize where on that spectrum do you live? Because it is a spectrum. I don't think it's either or. I think there's a lot of stuff happening in between. So where are you on that spectrum of trust, David? Are you that person that kind of goes, I meet someone, I get a good feeling, I'm in? Or are you one that says, I want to get to know you a little bit more before I can trust you? That's the same with other people. Other people have that same spectrum, and they're all kind of sitting in a space in that. And so first of all, it's understand where you are with trust. Are you someone who does it easily? Secondly, the person that you're trying to get to know, it's fair to try to figure out where they are. And so the simple way of doing that is to pose the question, to say, hey, listen, are you the type of person that is, trust people easily, or does it take time for you to trust? That helps you establish that level set of trust. The next thing around that level set of trust is to begin by really being curious about the person. The more someone is curious about you, the more you become comfortable with them. And I don't mean curious in the sense that you want to put the bright lights and interrogate. I mean curious in the sense of you are asking them questions about what's going on in their life. The questions don't feel superficial, but they don't feel intrusive, right? And hopefully they are being reciprocated, right? That the other person is also curious about you. Because if it's a one-sided curiosity, you're not building trust. It has to be where I'm curious about you and you're curious about me. The other thing is to not expect to trust people right away. It's okay. It's okay to go, I got to know you a little bit. I still don't know if I trust you, but I got to know you a little bit. And the more time you spend with them, the more you're building that trust bank. I have a colleague that talks about it as a currency. And I love that expression. This particular colleague, he does this amazing podcast that you all should listen to. I'll put a link in the chat for the podcast. But he really talks about it as a currency. And so think about every interaction with someone, you're putting a little money into the bank. So you're putting a little bit more trust into the bank. You're putting a little bit more trust into the bank. Sometimes people will do things that will require you to take some trust out of the bank. But then hopefully through the course of the relationship, you're putting more into the bank and then you're building that trust. And so that's just a kind of a little bit of a hint around how do I build trust and not just say, hey, I need to trust someone, but really look within yourself and say, what's my level of trust? Like, how do I trust people? Where am I on the spectrum of trust? And then let me pose the question to the other person. Where are they on the spectrum of trust? And you can build trust in a multitude of ways. A really cute, funny story around this was, I was in high school. By the way, my level of trust in terms of spectrum is on the end of I don't trust always right away. It's changed over time, but I'm moving closer, but I'm not a person that trusts people immediately. And so I remember meeting my best friend in high school and just sort of going, okay, interesting person, but I'm not really interested in them kind of thing. And she was the type of person that built trust right away. Like she saw me, she's like, I like this person. This person's going to be my friend. And for weeks, I kept looking at her like really in a suspicious way. As the kids go, I was really sus about her. And then an event happened in school, in the class we were at, that I thought was so cool how she reacted to it, that immediately accelerated my trust for her and made me go, yeah, I want to be her friend. I'm curious about her. And sometimes that's what it takes. It takes going through something with someone, or it takes experiencing something with someone to build up that trust. So keep that in mind, David, when you're thinking about trust. It's a multifaceted thing. Sometimes we do it easily. Sometimes we need time. Sometimes it's an experience. And sometimes it's just building that curiosity muscle around that person. With that, I want to say thank you for those wonderful questions. Keep those questions coming because we will be back in January with a new Monday with Marie. And I love these questions. And whatever you are celebrating, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas further down the road. Please know that we wish you and your family just peace, joy, and kindness as you close out the year. And again, thanks for joining.